I'm not sure what you can see of this. This is a little bit different for me this week because for the first time since I started doing the ups and downs all the way back in 2020, I'm actually stood in the TrekCulture offices in Newcastle, which is just a little bit exciting. Excuse me, I've been told several times that I shouldn't say Newcastle, I should say Gateshead, because that's where we are. Anyway, so yeah, you're on a field trip with me, an away mission if you will, but that's not why you're here. You are here to hear all about the fun things that myself, Ellie and Chris got up to this week, and you will hear all about them in our podcast. Make sure that you check that out. It comes out every Tuesday. You'll catch it on Acast or any of the podcast catchers of your choice. We will also be discussing some of the things that come up that this episode touches on. We're going to be talking about in the podcast as well. So for all of the reasons, make sure you're subscribed and make sure that you are following that. Without further ado, let's get straight into Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 4, Among the Lotus Eaters. This is an episode that we've actually been looking forward to for a while because it's going to revisit Rigel 7. Now, I'm sure to some people that's going to be like, that's nice. Why is this important? Well, if we go all the way back to 1964, in the episode The Cage, Captain Pike was dealing with the dilemma of having lost crew members on a disastrous away mission on Rigel 7. This episode directly addresses that. It's continuity at its finest, with an asterisk, but it was such a massive formative part of Jeffrey Hunter's Captain Pike that I'm really glad we've come back to it. The episode opens with a really interesting look at the challenges of two captains attempting to find personal time together. So actually that's my up straight away this week, is both Pike and Patel trying to steal some time away. This is the scene where we find out that Patel is still in the doghouse over well, she didn't defend Una. In fact, the whole point is that she didn't defend Una at the trial, but Vice Admiral Pusok feels that she didn't do a good enough job, and it turns out he has in fact blocked her from a promotion. Someone else altogether becomes Commodore, and she remains Captain. It's done so well. The communication comes through, she scoffs a bit of wine and says, let's just get to it, and Pike mucks up. He immediately goes into a bit of a self-blame spiral. He said, oh, by association with me, your career is hurting. Oh, this is dreadful, I'm so sorry. And, she's like, look, them's the breaks, I'll take the risk. And he goes, well, no, maybe I can't let you take the risk. It's so frustrating because there are so many people who do this, who they see someone else struggling, they then think that they are the only reason, and they will, well, I just remove myself from the situation and your life immediately gets better. By no means is Pike the only person who's ever been guilty of this. And so, in my next up of the episode, I love the fact Una calls him out on it. Patel quite rightly leaves. She's like, are you serious? She kind of, it's like, your timing is fantastic, Chris, because of course, she's just found out she didn't get a job she was going for, and he's broken up with her. Nice one, Chris. And so Una calls him out and says, you're doing what you always do. And he goes, what do I always do? You torpedo any relationship that seems to be getting serious. Well, are we? Oh, okay. We need to park this because they've just had the briefing, the message from Rigel 7 that the Starfleet Delta has been seen. This world is supposed to be pre-warp, it's supposed to not know anything about Starfleet. There was the whole thing with the disaster before, which I'll come to now in a moment. There is an issue, and it is a down. Because in this briefing, we see pictures of the 3 crew members who were lost on that away mission. Now, if you're watching this, I presume you've seen the episode. Spoiler, one of them isn't dead, one of them is still on the planet, and in both the file photo and of course on the planet, they are wearing a 2259 Strange New Worlds uniform. Now, not only is that a down, but this is in fact my Trellium down of the week. And look, you know me and uniforms, but specifically we were introduced to this version of the Enterprise in Star Trek Discovery. That was set a couple of years before this one, and of course, the mission to Rigel 7 is said to be in 2254, 5 years before this episode is set. So at the very least, they should be in Discovery era uniforms. Now, I did initially think maybe they should be in, Star Trek Discovery Season 2 Enterprise uniforms. But even there's a comment in the first episode about them getting new uniforms. So okay, so then should they not be in Discovery era uniforms like the rest of the fleet? Remember Admiral Cornwell? Even if we go back to 2 weeks ago, and there's that picture of Una and Pike in her quarters, Pike is in the Discovery uniform. So this to me, it's a mistake, and unfortunately it's a bad mistake.
There I was, right? And I was thinking, but there's also that picture of Pike and April that was in Pike's quarters in Equality of Mercy, where they're both wearing the Cage uniform as well. Not to mention the image of Gene Roddenberry in the Cage uniform as the other Robert April. But that's a whole other wibbly-wobbly thing.
The rest of the episode, the costume design, the updated costume design, I might add as well, of the Rigelians, that's an up for me. Bernadette Croft absolutely smashing it this week, costume designer. So unfortunately, it stood out, and that's why that's getting the down that it's getting. The design of how they've updated the Rigelian look, because it was, in a word, racist AF in 1964. It was actor with prosthetics playing a terrible interpretation of a historical Mongol type character, whereas you can see in this one the updated look to bring in elements of the what we see from artwork of Mongolian warriors without it being quite as 60s, shall we say. All of that aside now for a second, I have an up down, and my up down is this. My up is Melissa Navia. So Melissa Navia basically gets more to do in this episode than she's got to do in nearly any episode before this. And she gets the opening log, and gets a personal log supplemental as the episode goes on as well. And I really, really like that. I think she plays that opening scene where Spock, although he is not responsible, Spock delivers the news that means Ortegas has to stay on the ship. She's like, sometimes you just need to know when to leave people alone, Spock. And Spock goes, I am working on that. All of that scene is played really well. That, in fact, was the first scene we saw from Strange New Worlds Season 2. That was released quite a while ago. And so we've all been looking forward to the Ortegas episode. Which brings me to this down. Because if this was the Ortegas episode, I'm disappointed. Now, here's what. Melissa Navia, while getting more to do than in any other episode, compare it to the La'an episode last week, where Christina Chong just is given amazing material, and it was just fantastic for the whole hour. The week before, where Rebecca Romaine is given fantastic material. The week before, Ethan Peck given fantastic material. This week, Melissa Navia is given My Name is Erica Ortegas and I Fly the Ship. My name is Erica Ortegas, and I fly the ship. And the reason I'm being harsh about this, because we've been looking forward to an Ortegas episode since the pilot. But if this is it now, I have to say, this wasn't enough. She gets her hero moment, and that's fantastic, but is that it? Now, I am going to put an asterisk on this, and that is, this could be a bait and switch. There is a line in the beginning where Pike says to Ortegas, I'll get you next time. There's a chance that's very meta, and that it's their way of teasing us going, actually, this isn't the Ortegas episode. It's going to be down the line. Don't worry, we'll get to you. And if that's the case, I'm going to take that down back. All right, you have my word. If that's the case, this down will be removed, or at least, or a down from that episode, but we will remove one from the down counter if this is not the Ortegas episode. So there it is. There just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to call this an Ortegas episode. This was a Pike episode featuring Ortegas. They arrive on Rigel 7 and they realise that of the 3 supposedly dead crewmen, one is a little less dead than they assumed. In fact, Yeoman Zach, you know, the really, really important low member of the crew who just like runs around and gets the captain coffee and things like that. Do you want a medal? Anyway, well, you're not going to be High Lord, are you? Not with that kind of a coffee. Can you believe her? Down on the planet, we discover that Zach, this previously deceased crew member, is not only still alive, but has set himself up as like a High Lord. And, you know, Prime Directive be damned. We get a little bit of a muddled, and I feel stretched out storyline. There is good in it, but I have a couple of quick downs. One is, by the way, your memories are going to go, and then almost a minute later, their memories go. Okay, now they do set it up, to be fair. They set it up with La'an starts to do the ringing and Benga, and then Pike starts to get affected. Sure, and they say they've been walking for 20k, which is a while. But it's a bit like when you tell Wile E. Coyote he's gone off the edge of the cliff, that's when he falls. And that's sort of what it felt like. So that was a bit sudden for me. And that leads on to, unfortunately, where I believe the story is really stretched out, is that this guest character this week, unfortunately, is just not really given much to do. We hear about how we don't want memories with the totem tells, and we don't really want our memories, and it's good that we don't have our memories, and oh look, suddenly I have tattoos, and oh, sorry, yeah. I know how harsh that sounds. I know it's you're going to like, you know, kind of, Sean, you big grump. By no means the performance bad. It's nothing to do with that. It's just, it felt like they came across this idea of, right, we're going to do this thing with memories. What do we do with it? And they didn't nail that answer. So that was a down for me as well. Everyone does get a bit to do. We get, you know, the usual greatness from Babs Olusomakan. Christina Chong, less to do this week, but in fairness, all things to do last week. Anson Mount is very good this week. Although the whole thing with the memories doesn't really work for me, we do get a brilliant scene. You know, they go away from the castle to find out they have to come back to the castle, and they do that, and he accosts this former crew member, and points a rifle at him, and you know, he's there under the mistaken belief that, oh, I'm going to find my box of memories, and of course all you have to do is shield yourself, the memories come back, that's fine. But the memories do start to come back, and he looks at this crewman, this person who was nothing but a lowly yeoman. You know, Zach believes Pike never gave him a second thought. Flew away, left him for dead. And Pike says, of course not. As far as I knew, you were dead. And what's more, he goes, I mourned you, Zach. Now, whatever happened after that, that's not my fault. I mourned you. And that was an up for me. That whole exchange. Possibly more powerful than the episode deserved, if I'm being brutal. And I think it went away toward building the up counter up a little bit. But Anson Mount is undeniably excellent in that scene. It almost makes up for the earlier scene where we get a bit of standard Hollywood. One guard will run forward and fight, and then that guard will fall down, and then the next guard will run up and fight, and we've been doing this since the 40s, folks. Have we not got past this yet? Aboard the Enterprise, we get another week. Whoever thought Spock was going to be the comedy character? It's the line delivery. It works so well. So we have that first one of, you know, I am trying to work on that. Also, you know, his exchange with Ortegas on the bridge as well. And, you know, he's done a little dossier so everyone knows who they are, and he picks it up, but he can't read it. And it's actually really funny. Sorry, Ethan Peck is a very funny actor. So that is definitely an up for me as well. The last up for me in this episode was the exchange at the end. You know, we knew that, you know, Patel gave Pike a medallion at the start of the episode. It's a lovely gift, it's very meaningful, it's very touching, and of course, throughout the whole thing, they talk about totems and memories. We knew this was going to jog his memory, and it does help jog his memory, and it reminds him that he has to go and make amends. And he does, and I love it, because it shows, and as he says himself, very few people will understand what it means to be a Starfleet captain. And he said, there's only a handful of people in the galaxy. And he's right. When they have that exchange at the end, I believed it and I really enjoyed it. So I really hope that this relationship continues. I don't know if we need to see it every single week, but I do like that it's there. That for me is a resounding up. Before we get to Citation Observations, episodes like this, they kind of strike me a bit like A Piece of the Action, a bit like Patterns of Force, but more recently, like All the World's a Stage. This whole live, logs, and prosper. It's this idea of inspiring another culture, but adversely affecting them. I see where they were going with this one, but I'm not sure they quite landed it. There's a huge idea in there of rediscovering a former crew member who you thought had perished and has been blaming you this whole time. And although Zach does end up, being in control of this warlike race and setting themselves up as High Lord and all things like that, it didn't need to be Rigel 7. There was no particular reason why that had to be this planet. So it didn't really land for me. That's what my issue is. And I think overall, that contributes to this episode, in my opinion, being the weakest of the 4 that we've seen so far this season. I don't think it's a bad episode. I just think that in not too long a time, we're going to be going, what's the episode where Rigel, Lotus something or other. It's very beige, and that doesn't make it a terrible episode by any means. Many beige episodes have gone on to be beige in history. Just for me, we came running out the gate. Like my complaint about episode 1 was I just thought it was in the wrong place, that's all. We had an excellent, the trial episode, last week's episode I'm still absolutely in love with. And then this week's episode was just like just a big step down. I'm excited for next week. Let's see what they bring. We have a discussion video, spoiler alert, on the way in which we will cover some of the thoughts as to why I'm assigning beige to this episode and discussions about what's kind of going on in the franchise overall. So that's coming, and of course, as I said, don't forget to check out the podcast. Now, would you like to take a step with me to Citation Observations? Now, it wasn't a massive week for Citation Observations this week. We had, of course, the fact that it's set on Rigel 7. That solidifies the fact that, of course, the events of the cage did happen in the past and that they were revisiting, and I like that. It's always fun to see continuity. In Ortegas' quarters, she has a model of the USS Enterprise, and she's got a model of, presumably, the Shenzhou. They do look like the 2 Eagle Moss models, of which I have. They are so lovely, and we miss them. There is a funny moment where they are stood in a cage, and Pike goes, "This is a cage." To me, I just thought, all right, I get it. This is referencing the cage. This works for me. There is a talk about translating Tellarite sonnets at one point. There is a reminder that Una flew the Enterprise before Ortegas did. There is a funny scene when Ortegas is trying to remember, or trying to figure out how to get to her quarters, and the computer tells her, follow the illuminated path. Very like what happened in season 1 of The Next Generation. Just follow these lights. A very classic looking tricorder is pulled out of the box that Zach has been keeping on Rigel 7. There is a funny moment there toward the end when Ortegas and Spock are on the bridge and there's asteroids hitting everywhere and sparks fly from all of the consoles. Of course they do. It's a Starfleet ship. I beg your pardon? Get off my set! Leave the jacket. That is everything for our list today, folks. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. Let us know what you thought on the social media platform of your choice. We are on Twitter at TrekCulture, we're on Instagram at TrekCultureYT, and we're over on Blue Sky now as well, at TrekCulture, and you'll get us. You get me at Sean Ferrick on Twitter and Blue Sky, and you'll also get Chris at EditChrisEdit on Twitter and Instagram. That's a lot to remember. You are all awesome, everyone. Make sure that you look after yourselves. Make sure that whatever you end up doing in the next week, do it something positive. Lead with love, and let's put some kindness out into the world. To our friends in Ukraine, Slavia Ukrainia, to everyone out there, make sure that you live long and prosper, look after yourselves, and above all else, be good people. Thanks very much.